Oh, okay. It started. Hi, everyone. Today, the purpose of this lecture is just to give a very mini, uh, foundational summary of rhetoric. I know that we really didn't at all talk about it in class, but you all did some really wonderful um, discussion board posts that are incredibly clarifying. I'm going to actually read one or two of them that I think will be helpful for all of us to hear about. You all did a really, really great job of doing the reading, synthesizing it, and I think defining rhetoric in a way that's actually probably clearer than the readings. So before I go over that, I just wanted to uh, just go over the Lauer very, very, very speedily. I know that most of you, not most of you, many of you in your discussion posts sort of latched onto the Lauer. You were interested in this idea of the history of rhetoric as a field. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize what this field means and why there's so much Greco-Roman language in the current um, concepts of rhetoric. So, as Lauer said, that in the 1960s you have this resurgence of um, rhetoric as a discipline in the academy. So, why does he call it a resurgence? Well, because during the Greco-Roman period, people such as Aristotle were obsessed with the concept of rhetoric. They were obsessed with oration. Okay, what does it mean to give a convincing speech? Okay, and so historically, rhetoricians went backwards to the Greco-Roman period. And so that's why so many of these concepts are um, coming from that very language. Okay, so some fundamental pieces would be um, logos, ethos, pathos, and kairos, which we'll talk about more. But these are different strategies that a rhetor, right? That's the word that's used for the person who's speaking, might use in order to convince an audience of whatever they are trying to convey. Um, Ethos refers to credibility. So, for example, someone like me, I have a PhD, and I get up there and I start talking about literature. I have a PhD in literature. Okay, check. Ethos. Okay, credibility. Um, Two, we have pathos, which is an emotional appeal. Okay, so you bring up things that are going to pull at the heartstrings, right, of your audience, so that they are more likely to uh, appreciate uh, your talk or whatever. So either it could be a written piece, it could be a talk, etc. Um, and logos would be logical appeals, so using logic as a way to convince your audience. And kairos or exigence is uh, the urgency of the moment, the situation. Okay, so for example, if you gave a speech 10 years ago on COVID versus if you gave a speech now on COVID as a scientist who specializes in it, 10 years ago probably there wouldn't be that much interest in it, right? Um, or people wouldn't really, care or what have you. Now, because of the kairos, the exigence, right, the urgency of the moment, you already are gonna reel people in. Okay, so there's that. So some of this here, some fundamental concepts are on here, right? I talked about exigence. Um, Audience is an important part of rhetoric. You want to um, know who your audience is and write or perform to your specific audience. And that's a part of rhetorical analysis, right? Where you start to piece out, well, what is this person doing? Who is their audience? Why are they saying the things that they're saying? Um, it changes depending on who your audience might be, right? So, for example, if I was giving a talk on literature at a conference of 19th century American literature, that talk would be very different from, let's say, if I guest lectured in a ninth grade class where I knew someone and they wanted me to come in and talk about okay, yeah, it's still going. Okay. And they wanted me to talk about 19th century American literature, right? So the jargon's going to be very different. The way that I talk about it's going to be very different. So that's just an example. So here on this page, okay, we have logos, right, which I was talking about, pathos, ethos, and I'm going to put this online so you'll have it as a resource. So again, these Greco-Roman concepts are being pulled into the contemporary language of rhetorical analysis as a field. So I just want to emphasize that why are we seeing all this Greek and Latin and all that? So what I want to do is quickly to go over one or two posts that I found really interesting and I think useful for people. So Leah in her post said when she's trying to figure out what rhetoric is, says what makes rhetoric different from simple speech is the same thing that differentiates literature from a grocery list. Rhetoric is the artful combination of words to form a speech that is persuasive and aesthetically appealing. So this is precisely that, okay? Standing up and reading a telephone book, which I think you guys still know what that was, or reading from the dictionary, right, is very different from making a persuasive argument, okay? So in both cases you're reading, but in one case we don't have a rhetorical moment, right? We don't have whatever. Okay, so that I think I'll leave it at that because I think Leah really got at this fundamental concept of what rhetoric is. And one more thing that I liked, and again, all of you did great stuff. I'm just bringing up some that will just be helpful for this short little video thing that I'm doing. So Michelle, I also really like this post. I think it's helpful for all of us to look at. She says, I define the word rhetoric as an aesthetic form of persuasion. Okay,